Some of your most viewed videos are about how to handle narcissists in our life. So many people have a narcissist who's a parent.
Right.
And they didn't even know what that meant until a year ago. And now they're like, whoa, I was raised with that. Or perhaps it's a partner or it's friends.
She knows. She knows. Oh my God, this is so funny.
That's like what's actually out in the world because of people creating hate. It's not just a tabloid. It's not just some story. You are making me scared.
Something happened around Meghan Markle's 45th birthday that was far more uncomfortable than one forgotten message. Because the real story was not who showed up, it was the extraordinary number of famous people who suddenly appeared to say absolutely nothing. And when people who once praised you publicly, attended your biggest moments, defended you before cameras, and helped open doors suddenly go quiet at exactly the same time, silence stops looking accidental. It starts looking like a pattern. And that pattern began with perhaps the strangest birthday coincidence of all.
Jamie Kern Lima, who last year was leaving gushing birthday notes and all of this kind of stuff on the internet. And of course, the problem is this year she didn't put out anything at all, and now has a lovely podcast going on about how to deal with a narcissist.
Who could she be talking about, Paula?
I'm not sure, but I do think it's interesting.
Meghan Markle's birthday arrived, yet instead of the affectionate public tribute many might have expected from Jamie Kern Lima, the conversation surrounding Jamie Kern Lima went in a completely different direction. A podcast discussion about recognizing narcissistic behavior. No glowing photograph. No sentimental birthday message. No public celebration of a friendship that had previously looked incredibly warm. Suddenly, the subject was empathy, self-interest, emotional manipulation, and knowing when silence itself becomes an answer. Now, nobody in that conversation explicitly said the episode was about Meghan Markle, and that distinction matters, but the timing immediately sent people searching for meaning. Why? Because only a year earlier, the public image had looked dramatically different.
That is you, my friend. I love you.
I love you, and I know you are a narcissist, and now become so despondent I'm gonna host an episode of my podcast talking all about it. We see you, Jamie Kern Lima. We feel you.
That earlier appearance had presented warmth, admiration, and closeness. Cameras were rolling, compliments were flowing, and Meghan was described in language that made the relationship look almost impossible to misunderstand. So when another birthday came around and the visible affection disappeared, people noticed. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was nothing. But gossip explodes precisely inside that gap between what people once did publicly and what they suddenly refuse to do now.
Again, it all just feels rather pointed, as you say, on the week where there was no birthday message at all.
You know, there are a lot of people who were like, well, maybe they sent it privately, but in Meghan's world, if you don't send something publicly, it didn't happen.
And then Jefferson Fisher entered the conversation. His remarks about people lacking empathy and focusing entirely on themselves were broad observations, not a direct accusation against Meghan Markle. Yet online speculation immediately connected the dots because Jamie Kern Lima never needed to name anybody for viewers to start asking uncomfortable questions. That is what made the moment so combustible. A direct attack could have been denied. A vague discussion leaves everybody staring at the timing, wondering whether the silence was actually louder than a statement. Then came the birthday count. According to the transcript, the public acknowledgments were startlingly sparse, and suddenly attention shifted toward names once associated with Meghan's celebrity circle. Serena Williams became impossible to ignore because the history was so visible. This was not some random Hollywood acquaintance dragged into an online theory. Serena had been connected to major chapters of Meghan's rise, which made the absence of a conspicuous birthday message irresistible gossip material. Again, silence proves nothing on its own, but when the public has spent years being shown friendship, people inevitably notice when the public evidence disappears. Then Abigail Spencer entered the picture. Abigail Spencer had previously been publicly enthusiastic, which made the contrast especially sharp. And this is where the story becomes less less about one birthday and more about changing relationships. One person forgetting means almost nothing. Several familiar faces becoming quieter over time creates a completely different perception, especially when those relationships once seemed designed for everyone to see. And that is the thread running underneath everything. Before versus now. Public affection versus public distance. Photographs versus silence. Big declarations versus nothing. Even Jefferson Fisher's discussion about the power of not responding suddenly sounded different when placed beside that birthday. No response can become a response when the history behind it is loud enough. Then the story widened beyond birthdays entirely. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were linked in the transcript to reports surrounding their Montecito home, while Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were simultaneously being discussed as possible buyers in the area. That coincidence instantly revived an older, painfully awkward chapter. Meghan had reportedly wanted Taylor Swift on the Spotify podcast badly enough to send a handwritten invitation. Taylor declined. Meghan later attended a concert, and stories circulated about an attempted backstage meeting that did not happen. Meanwhile, Taylor was later publicly photographed with William and Catherine, creating exactly the kind of contrast royal watchers love dissecting. And then came Bianca. Meghan had once prominently reacted to receiving a text from Bianca during the Netflix documentary, turning that moment into visible proof of extraordinary celebrity access. Later came the photographed Bianca concert appearance. Yet around the 45th birthday, the transcript paints another silence. Separately, Serena Williams, Jessica Maroney, and Abigail Spencer represented relationships that once carried enormous public significance, while George and Amal Clooney, Idris Elba, David and Victoria Beckham, and James Corden represented another layer entirely. Celebrity connections surrounding the wedding that appeared far less visible years later. That is why this story refuses to die. It is not one missing birthday card. It is the accumulation of disappearances, changed alliances, vanished photographs, and friendships that once looked unbreakable until suddenly nobody seemed eager to explain where they went. And the deeper the timeline goes, the more uncomfortable the next question becomes. If all these relationships change separately, why does the pattern look so remarkably similar? And the silence around the birthday only became more uncomfortable once the old Hollywood circle was placed beside what was happening now, because the transcript moves next into the Beckhams, James Corden, and a much bigger question about whether these relationships simply faded or whether people began choosing distance on purpose. David and Victoria Beckham had once appeared deeply embedded in the wider celebrity orbit, but the relationship cooled while David became increasingly visible beside William and the King. James Corden had shared major public moments with Harry, yet that relationship also appeared dramatically quieter. Then came the allegation that finally turned the story from awkward into brutal. A source quoted by the Daily Mail claimed the couple expected expensive treatment because people should supposedly consider access to their circle a privilege, including private planes and lavish hospitality. The same account described Meghan as cheap, an allegation presented by the source rather than an established fact. But socially, the damage of a description like that is obvious. Angela Levin then offered another explanation, arguing that many powerful figures have connections with the King's Trust and simply have no desire to create problems involving Harry and Meghan. Nobody needs to announce a blacklist when everyone independently decides the safest option is distance. Then the story moves directly into Montecito, and suddenly Jennifer Aniston becomes the center of an almost painfully awkward social drama. Reports described Meghan sending gifts, artisanal jam, wellness packages, notes, lunch invitations, and even an invitation to appear on the podcast. But according to the claims repeated in the transcript, Jennifer Aniston wanted absolutely no part of it. The story circulating was that the gifts were discarded and the invitations ignored. Angela Levin portrayed the persistence as desperate and even used the word pathetic, turning what might otherwise have looked like friendly neighborly outreach into something much harsher. And then another detail appears. Jennifer Aniston's closest friend is Courtney Cox, while Harry had written about Courtney Cox in his book. Suddenly, the rejection described in those reports no longer looked mysterious at all. The transcript's implication is viciously simple. Perhaps the distance was never confusion. Perhaps the answer had already been decided. Next came Gwyneth Paltrow, another Montecito connection that had reportedly been inflated into a friendship after one restaurant sighting. Gwyneth Paltrow publicly clarified that she barely knew the couple, saying she had met Meghan but did not actually know her. No screaming feud, no dramatic confrontation. Just a calm correction, and sometimes those are the statements that hurt the most because there is nothing to fight against. Then, Kris Jenner and Kim Kardashian appear. Photographs featuring the Sussexes were posted and later deleted, with reports claiming the family did not want to upset the monarchy. Jamie, Kern, Lima, and Sarah Blakely are mentioned again in the transcript as examples of friendships commentators had already predicted could become fragile. And then the business relationships begin collapsing into the same narrative. Oprah Winfrey gave the interview that shook the royal story, yet commentary quoted in the transcript portrays Oprah as keeping professional distance rather than maintaining an intimate friendship. Then Spotify enters the wreckage. Bill Simmons famously attacked the podcast venture after the deal ended. Netflix follows. A documentary associated with the couple reportedly failed to secure Netflix backing, struggled to find buyers at Sundance, and eventually produced brutally weak box office numbers after another distributor picked it up. The transcript even emphasizes that a compilation involving internet cat videos performed better, creating the kind of humiliation critics could hardly invent more perfectly. And then, just when the professional setbacks appear to have reached maximum embarrassment, the story swings straight back to the 45th birthday itself. Meghan posted a photograph jumping into a pool with balloons, and critics immediately compared the image with an older photograph of Princess Diana. The transcript calls the broader pattern Project Diana, pointing toward clothing. Perfume references and visual similarities that critics claim repeatedly evoke Princess Diana. Harry's attachment to his mother is then pulled into that interpretation, making the accusation even more emotionally explosive. Finally come the numbers. The transcript cites YouGov figures showing historically weak British favorability, then returns to that devastating birthday count. Tracy Robbins and Kelly McKee's often publicly acknowledged Meghan, while as ever Meghan's own company also posted a birthday tribute. The woman once surrounded by Oprah, the Clooneys, the Beckhams, Idris Elba, Serena Williams, and James Corden was now being measured not by who appeared beside her, but by who no longer did. And that may be the darkest detail of the entire story. Jamie, Kern, Lima never publicly named Meghan Markle in that narcissism discussion. Jefferson Fisher never publicly declared that Meghan Markle was the subject. But after years of spectacular friendships, enormous celebrity connections, and carefully photographed alliances, the internet did what the internet always does. It looked at the silence, looked at the vanished relationships, looked at the birthday, and started connecting dots. Whether those dots form the picture critics insist they do remains disputed. But one thing cannot be ignored: the questions are getting louder precisely because so many of the people involved have chosen to say absolutely nothing.